Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Ted Flint. With us today, Assemblyman Don Miller, who serves the 121st Assembly District, which includes Onondaga County. Assemblyman Miller, nice to have you.
Good to be here.
As we tape this program, we're told that there is a tentative budget agreement.
Tentative.
That's the operative word. $132.5 billion, which
big number.
Reduces spending, we're told.
Perhaps.
You're going to fill us in on that.
Yes.
You're a little skeptical on the numbers. It reduces a projected $10 billion deficit without raising taxes.
Perhaps.
Without borrowing. But you're going to fill us in. You're a little bit skeptical as to the total budget figure. Why is that?
Because it all depends on what happens in the legislature. It all depends on what's actually in the bill. I've heard a lot of radio advertising. I've read a lot of press releases. But I've also read the governor's executive budget proposal, which talks not about cutting spending but increasing spending. It doesn't talk about closing budget gaps but preserving them and actually expanding them 4 or 5 years down the road. It doesn't talk about, with no new taxes. It actually talks about increasing taxes. And so I'm extraordinarily skeptical at the moment. I'm hoping for a good deal. I'm hoping that the proposal that actually comes out is a good one. But so far, I have yet to see that.
That's true. I mean, the legislature would have to approve it, and it hasn't done that as yet. And you haven't seen the budget, so you'd have to just look it over and see what you like, what you don't like. Do you expect us to like any part of it, or?
I'm hoping to like all of it.
Yeah.
I'd love to get a good budget deal, but and folks are pretty excited that we're going to be either on time or maybe even a day early.
Yeah.
Even if we're a day late, a couple days late, we're pretty darn close to the mark. But I'd rather have a good budget deal than an on-time budget deal. If it mirrors what the governor's original executive proposal said was going to be in it, I'd rather wait and get something a little better.
That's a perfect segue for the original budget proposal. Let's take a look at what the governor proposed in February, his budget submission, and we'll come back, we'll comment on that and talk about a few other things with Assemblyman Don Miller.
There's a woman in my district, she owns a business, about 15 employees, and she came to me one day about 4 weeks ago now and said, Don, I need your help. And I said, of course, what can I do? She said, I want to move my business. And I'm thinking, oh, no, not another one. She's going to Delaware, she's going to Pennsylvania, she's going to Connecticut, New Jersey. I said, why would you want to do that? She said, well, because really I can get a better deal somewhere else. I said, New York is a great place to be. You don't necessarily want to go to Pennsylvania or Texas or Ohio. And she said, no. Do you still know anybody in China? I want to move to China. I said, why on earth would you ever want to do that? She said, well, I've been talking with some of the economic people over there, the economic ministers over there in Shanghai and in Guangzhou, and I can get a much better deal there than I can get here. I just want to know if you have anybody over there that I can talk to about that. Why is she leaving? She's leaving because, pick one. A millionaire's tax that raises $706 million this year in this debate today was called, I want to get it right, a touch of taxing. If $706 million is a touch of taxing, I want to know what a lot of taxing is. How big does that number have to get before we start to take the families and the employers in our state seriously? How big does it have to get? She's leaving because New York State is one of the worst in the nation on taxing and spending and regulating by state government. She's leaving because she can get a better deal in a totalitarian dictatorship than she can get right here in New York State. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be voting in the negative on this bill, and who knows what comes next. I urge my colleagues to do the same.
Obviously not the governor's budget submission, but you can work with it. The governor says agrees with a lot of that. I mean, well, I'll let you comment. I mean, communist China has as friendly a business climate as does New York.
No, friendlier, and that's the problem. Is that she can get a better business deal in as I said, in a totalitarian dictatorship than she can get here. And I finished that statement out with, who knows what comes next? Well, this is perhaps the other shoe. This budget proposal, where the governor talks about reducing spending, and, the all funds version of the budget, the big $130+ billion version of the budget that everyone hears about. It's going from $136 billion last year to $133 billion this year. But that doesn't actually represent a decrease in spending. What that represents is the missing federal stimulus money. We're going to lose about $6 billion in federal stimulus money this year. That should take the budget from $136 billion down to $130 billion. But the budget's not going down to $130 billion, it's going to $133. So there's $3 billion of additional spending in there somewhere. And we can find at least part of that. The general fund, the part of the budget that's funded by taxpayers, directly by New York State taxpayers, whether they're families or businesses, spending in the general fund is not going down. It's going up 2.9%. And so the idea that there are spending reductions in this budget are, at least in its original incarnation, in the budget that was proposed by the governor, simply false. Taxes are the same story. The governor's radio advertising has said, we're doing all these things with no new taxes. There may not be any new types of taxes, although there may be that as well. But the truth is, in his own executive proposal, the governor asks for $455 million in new taxes, tax increases in existing taxes. So is it not a new tax? Well, maybe true.
It's not new.
Technically, it's not a new type of tax. We're not taxing neckties, for example, or well. Actually, no, that's not true. We actually are. There's a clothing tax that's kicked in. I'll have to come up with something that's not taxed. It's hard to do in this state. Mm-hmm. But there are what the governor calls revenue actions in his executive proposal for an additional $455 million. Those are $455 million private sector dollars that are being moved into the public sector. And by anyone's definition, that's a tax. The idea that we're closing this budget gap of $10 billion. Well, in the governor's proposal, there's a $2 billion gap scheduled for next year. And again, those are on the best case scenario numbers. And that budget gap grows to $9.2 billion, almost where we are today, by 2015, just three budget years away. So I am a little bit skeptical. I'd like to see something different in the proposal that comes up this week.
Let's talk about the millionaires taxes. You mentioned that on that piece we just saw. The speaker has said that he's going to forego that as part of the budget deal, but he's going to introduce that in a separate bill. So that's not going away. The Senate has said it's dead. Governor said he's not interested. Is it possible that could become reality here in the Assembly? If it's going to be dead in the Senate, dead?
Well, anything in the Assembly is possible.
It would be a one-house bill, wouldn't it? How could it take law?
It would likely be a one-house bill. I voted against it the first time. I'd vote against it again. There are, a couple of fundamental arguments that are being made in favor of the millionaire's tax. One is that the rich need to pay their fair share. Well, again, if you look at the numbers, 5% of the population in this state pays 50% or more of the taxes in this state, and that's not the bottom 5%. It's not the middle 5%. That's the top 5% who pay 50% of the taxes. Mm-hmm. So in terms of fair share, I think if you flip those numbers around in any other direction, and said that 5% of anyone should pay 50% of something, under any other circumstance, in any other scenario, that would be considered to be unfair. And so, in my opinion, the top 5% are already paying at least their fair share. The other argument that you hear is that, well, these rich folks are the ones who have made out, and they've got the ability to pay. I'm not one of them. I'm not part of the top 5%. So I don't know if they've made out, but what I do know is that if you ask anyone to reprioritize, anyone has the ability to pay more. The question is that really what families and businesses are designed to do? Is that really our purpose? Is our purpose to support government? And the answer is no. The purpose of a family is to raise children and provide for a future. The purpose of a business is to make money.
Right.
That's the point. And that probably sounds fairly radical today in today's political climate, but that's really the purpose of a business.
That's it, to make money. And in the process, society benefits. Jobs are created.
Exactly.
But that's not the primary reason people want to open a business. It's you want to make money.
Exactly.
And the common good is benefited by that.
Right. And the vast majority of the folks who want to open a business, they start out, as a small sort of stereotypical mom and pop shop somewhere. And the reason that they're doing that is to support their family. And in my opinion, there's absolutely nothing wrong and everything honorable about doing things that are honest and legal and decent to support your family.
That's just how government, it's even more stark at the national level, the redistribution of the wealth, as you know.
Yes.
And that's just the way things are done. It's not fair. It seems un-American at times to take from some to give to others. Mm-hmm. But that's the enterprise that government is engaged in at all levels.
Yeah, it is. And actually, for those reasons, those are the types of things that I've observed, that I've, as a New Yorker, that I live with every day. And that's actually been the impetus behind some of the legislation that I've put forth. A 0% property tax cap that includes relief from unfunded state mandates for local governments, a spending cap, an overall spending cap on state government, a requirement for a 2/3 majority in both the Assembly and the Senate before any stream of revenue to the state can be increased, and certain other things to make us more competitive. Eliminating the capital gains tax in New York State, eliminating the estate tax or the death tax in New York State, eliminating the corporate franchise tax. These are the types of things that we need to do in order to get out of last place. We are one of the worst in the nation on job creation because we're worst on taxing and spending and regulating. If we simply decide to stop doing those bad things, we have locked ourselves into last place. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, that's not good enough. We need to begin to take positive steps. We need to do some positive forward-looking things in order to get us out of last place into the, somewhere in the bottom 20% in the next 5 years, and then move us up toward the middle after that. And changing the way we tax, changing the way government thinks about families and businesses, in my opinion, is the way to do that.
And we have an introduction here. We could save this for the next show, or we could do it now. I want to follow up on the property tax cap, or just capping in general. This budget caps Medicaid and school aid at 4%. But you say that guarantees a 4% increase.
Well, it's not really a cap. The reason that my property tax cap is a 0% cap is because that actually caps taxes. Mm-hmm. When you talk about a cap, the Senate has passed a 2% cap this year, a 4% cap last year. With a 4% property tax cap, no one actually believes that taxes will only go up 3%. Taxes are going to go up the full 4%, right, whatever the cap is. That's a guaranteed automatic tax increase every year for each year that legislation is in place.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it guarantees that it's going to go up by that amount. And
that's right.
0% would is what it implies. No increase.
Right. Well, and when you're talking about Medicaid, for example, if you've got a 4% cap on Medicaid spending is going to go up 4% every year. Mm-hmm. That's already over a third of the state budget.
So you're less than giddy about this tentative budget deal, I can tell.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm anticipating something better by the end of the week, and I'm hoping that we get it. Yeah. I'm hoping that we get something that I can vote for because it's good for families, sure, it's good for businesses, it's good for students in the classroom, it's good for workers on the job, it's good for teachers in the classroom. Those are the types of things I'm looking for.
And this situation is fluid as we tape this program. It could change by the end of the week, end of the day even.
Sure.
If you want to get in touch with Assemblyman Don Miller, do that by calling his district office, and that number on the screen is area code 315-452-1115. Assemblyman Miller, thank you for your insights. Appreciate it. All right, thank you for joining us on this edition of Assembly Calendar. We'll see you soon. I'm Ted Flint.